The room was dark and cold. Slabs of smooth gray concrete lay beneath my feet, to either side, behind and above me. The smell was of sweet mildew, wet almost. I held onto the cylinder bars that kept me boxed in this prison-like room. Dressed in my favorite pair of navy blue pajama pants, spotted with small crescent moons and a fitted white tank top, I exhaled the breath I sucked in seconds earlier. My feet were bare, but surprisingly, the floor wasn't as cold as I expected. Keys dangled in the distance. Footsteps echoed, growing louder the closer they got to my cell. I closed my eyes tight. Here he is, I thought. I could feel him. My heart grew heavy in my chest, the pit of my stomach hollowed, and tiny chill bumps appeared all over my body. I knew he was smiling at me, that crooked, deceptive smile. I opened my eyes. Sure enough, I was greeted by his menacing grin. Hello, Fear. My voice, barely above a whisper, shook with the mention of his name. He moved closer to the bars that now seemed to protect me from his full reach. Kharissa, he said. Though we stood only inches apart, his voice seemed so distant. It was as if his mouth lip-synced thoughts that were playing in my head. He continued, I'm elated to see you here. Running that book was, he paused, a bad idea. I looked away, succumbing in agreement. No one would ever read what you wrote, Fear said. And if they did read it, they would see you as silly. It would flop, you would fail, and we know how much you hate failure. He swung the keys looped on an oversized ring around his long, skinny finger, taunting me. I looked him in the eyes. It's for the best, he said. But is it? A soft voice from behind me, simultaneously sweet and stern, broke the tension. Fear rolled his eyes. I turned to see who shared the cell with me, the cell in which I was so sure I was alone. There stood Liberation, fierce and tall, but not at all intimidating. I couldn't tell if he was male or female. He or she was just spirit. Come to save the day? Fear asked sarcastically. Liberation smiled at me, a countenance in complete contrast of the sinister expression Fear had met me with. Holding my gaze, Liberation replied, Oh, this is no damsel in distress. She looked at Fear. She just needs a little encouragement, that's all. Fear threw his hands in the air, then placed them on his lanky hips. Don't you get it? You're going to ruin her. She's going to be destroyed, and it's going to be all your fault. Fear had my attention. Liberation cocked his head to the side. How do you know? Last time I checked, you have no capability of foreseeing the future. My eyes darted to Liberation. You see, she began, Fear may appear to have good intentions. He comes across as if he aims to protect you, to shield you from some potential gloom. But all he's really doing is hindering your potential and prolonging the time between who you are and who you are meant to be. Liberation sat on a black stool and crossed his legs, fingers interlocked resting on his knee. Fear shook his head. No, don't listen to that garbage, Kharissa. Resistance is necessary. You're fine, comfortable. Why risk it? I didn't have an answer. Liberation chimed in. Because what you're offering is temporary. She looked at me. Regret is forever. And if you never go for it, you're always going to wonder, what if you had? She might fail, Fear yelled. Liberation stood and yelled back, "So what? What is failure anyway but a valuable lesson that she may never learn any other way?" I nodded. "I have to at least try." Again, Fear shook his head. "You'll be sorry." I shrugged. Maybe, maybe not. But I looked at Liberation for some sort of approval. He smiled. I looked back at Fear. "I'm going to do this. I have to." "That a girl," Liberation said. I walked to the bars and pointed to the keys that dangled from his hand. "I need you to let me out of here," I said. Fear sighed. "No, you don't." He walked away. After his footsteps could no longer be heard, I placed my hands on the bars and gave it a gentle push. The cell door opened, a clear indication that I never needed Fear's permission. I was never really his captive in the first place. I turned to Liberation. "Thank you," I said. She waved her hand, dismissing my gratitude. "I didn't do anything." He stepped towards me. "Just know, Fear will be back, and he will return every time you're ready to take the next step. Don't let him win." I smiled. "I won't." I walked through the doorway and turned to look at Liberation one last time, but of course she was gone. And just like that, I was free. The end.